Hello and welcome to the King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martins. It's May 29, 2025, just putting that date on the record. Sometimes I don't pay attention to dates. And I have the immense pleasure of hosting author Jeff Brown in today's episode, if you can call it that. The King Heroes Journey, if you happen to be new to it, is a place where people speak the truth, not the popular truth, not the truth that makes them friends or keeps them connected with their peers that they care about and want their approval, but the actual truth. And that's the mission that I'm on, to go right to the end of the earth for that, sometimes at all cost. The hero's journey is exactly what I have been on, what I know Jeff Brown has been on. I consider it to be a spiral. We go on it many times. And today we're going to talk about Jeff's latest round on the hero's journey and where he's at with that. I will just share with you a little bit about his background first, which is extensive. Him and I go way back to, I think it was 2012 or earlier even than that, in the internet days when Jeff had a stronghold in what was then organic algorithms, which is amazing. We don't know what that's like anymore by any stretch of the imagination. Come and say hello in the chat if you're already there. Hello, Janet. Nice to see you and host you here. So Jeff is a former criminal lawyer and psychotherapist. There's a little bit of what we're going to talk about that's related to that today. And he's the author of 7 popular books, the first being Soulshaping, then Ascending with Both Feet on the Ground, Love It Forward, An Uncommon Bond, Spiritual Graffiti, Grounded Spirituality, Hearticulations, which I believe he's going to, or no, it's Humanifestations. He's going to read a little bit out of today, and Where is God in All of This? He's also the producer and central subject in the award-winning spiritual documentary Carmageddon. That's around the time that I think we connected, which also features some of the Kirtan artists I used to be fans of, not so much anymore. And he's authored a series of inspirations for ABC's Good Morning America, has been featured on Fox News and dozens of radio shows, and contributed to the Washington Post, the Elephant Journal, The Spirit of Matt, Positively Positive, The Good Men Project, Unity Magazine, Rebel Society, that's rings a bell in my past, and Maria. In 2010, he wrote the Apologies to the Divine Feminine, which went viral. He brings an honest and human approach to what he calls grounded spirituality. I definitely inherited that. I now speak out against ascension madness and do ascension myth busting as a result of my own experiences and the dangers of ascension, actually. So you can find that training on my website for free if you'd like. And his dictionary, New Terms and Short Impactful Writings, became a phenomenon some years ago and was shared by seekers and growers worldwide. So today we're going to be talking about his new book, and I'll bring him on without further ado. Hello, Jeff, and welcome.
Hey, Beth. You know, I've done, like, over the year, I think it was 2010 that I came to Winnipeg.
Yes.
I
Oh,
done a
2010. Okay, good.
Yeah, I'd done a little book tour thing in California. And then I went to Winnipeg, and you were good enough somehow to get an article in the big Winnipeg newspaper about me. And then we went to, what was the name of the person? McNally's, right? McNally Robinson. And there were like 150 people because of this article. Um, And I've always loved the peg. You know, I just call it it's like the big barn bed. I always liked flying from Toronto when I was in the bioenergetic training program and floating into Winnipeg. My shoulders would drop. And compared to the vibe of downtown Toronto where I lived, it just felt like such a peaceful place, you know, such nice people. And, you know, they'd say hello to you on the street, all kinds of weird stuff like that. But so I've done, I think, over 1,000 shows and podcasts over the years. I haven't done one, I don't think, in a year or two because of this Trudeau thing. So it's bear with me if I am somewhat inarticulate and not quite sharp enough as I used to be. But
Your memory is astounding, Jeff. That's
yes,
awesome.
memory is still functioning,
Yeah, right.
despite all the techno terror any human could ever ingest in 54 months. I remember shit because I have to document the shit for the book, right? So
There
it's
you
like
go.
memory is so fucking tunneled, even if I'm not as brilliantly sharp as I once was. But I wanted to read this quote, if I could, from Humanifestations, just to open.
Sure. Can I just share something about Winnipeg? It went to hell. So I just want to completely
Hmm.
disillusion you. Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
mean, it's Canada's captured, so why wouldn't it go to hell?
yeah.
This is all we can talk about my views on the deliberateness of every single piece of this, and the great problem that us conditioned Canadians, conditioned to politeness, conditioned to not believing that the darkness is here but is only south of the border, conditioned to apologize even when somebody bangs into us, I think really have a hard time because of that, not because of intelligence, because of the conditioning, to really understand exactly what's going on. And the fact that they voted for Carney, who's a globalist who doesn't even live in Canada, over a nationalist who actually wants to, Pierre Poilievre, who wants to protect Canadian rights, tells you we are living in a really out of touch and delusional landscape. So with that in mind, let me just read this quote from, so this is a book called Humanifestations. I talk about it more in Trudeau's Kitchen book, because when this book came out, suddenly all the books that we were distributing of this book got returned from Amazon in Canada. It essentially got blocked on Amazon UK, which was a really important funnel for us to build a book's credibility. And also they limited Hearticulations, a very good selling sister book. And I believe the reason they did that is because it had a number of quotes in it that I was writing in social media about this political situation. So Amazon restricted the book. I have screenshots of it restricted. I have evidence of everything that I'm saying. And between Meta and Amazon, they're a really huge part of the story. And in my view, because of what has happened, the catastrophe that has occurred physically, financially, medically, because of these experiences, I think the story really proves why monopolies should not exist in Western life under any circumstances. So let me read the quote from page 120 of Humanifestations. The changes that we long for individually and collectively demand that we re-brave after generations of our courage torn asunder. Presently, I am re-braving after a difficult stage that unbraved me. It is evident to me that many of the systems that govern and manage us are actually designed to unbrave us. Because if we are not brave, we will not see the ways that we are worked and manipulated, and we will not speak truth to power. A rebraved humanity will not tolerate anything that impedes our gifts, callings, and offerings. A rebraved humanity will burn through the veils of greed and deception that obstruct us. A rebraved humanity will craft the world of limitless possibility that is our individual and collective birthright. A rebraved humanity will fight for our right to the light. A rebraved humanity cannot be stopped. I always wanted to die a warrior on the battlefield of truth. I can think of no greater cause. I dedicate the rest of my life to rebraving myself and others. We have been diminished and disempowered for far too long. Join me, if you will. And that is from the obstructed, shadow banned, and unnecessarily blocked lovely book, Humanifestations.
That's beautiful.
Let's go.
Yeah, welcome, Temi, and Silamo says,
Nice.
I call them sane and informed
Yeah,
individuals which come together to build better societies. Don't want them. Yeah, yeah. Rebrave. I like that word a lot, actually. That's a really cool
absolutely.
one. Now, before we jump right into it, would you mind if I asked what happened for you in 2020? It's a common question just to see, because that was a transformational moment for everybody, and whether that took a few weeks to wake up. I actually was awoke, if you can call it that word doesn't work, but in 2015 when my dad was dying, we started to be presented with all kinds of things, including the very dark shadow of feminism, which is in fact how this podcast got born in the first place, waking up to that. So what was it like for you when the world went insane? Were you already connected with Sophie at that time, or was it post then? Yeah,
Yeah. So when you're talking about when the pandemic started, um, that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
right.
So I didn't particularly care. I wasn't at that time focused on the question of why things are brought into manifestation by the powers that be. All my childhood, that's all I cared about. But I was in a stage where I was really, I was really upturning systems, writing grounded spirituality, calling it the New Cage movement. In a very particular way, that was my point of focus. And I was avoiding my lawyer warrior activist self on the broader level, because I don't think I think I needed a break from him. I feel like I spent lifetimes inside of him, and so and because Susan had asthma and thyroid issues, I didn't particularly care why the thing started. I just took seriously that it was having a real strong impact, as far as I knew, on people with those conditions. That's all I care. I just went straight into protector. That's all I understood. And I'm a firstborn Jew. It's very easy for me to go into protector. And so I took it really, really seriously, for that reason primarily. And I didn't get into. It seemed ridiculous to me that they said it was like a bat market, or like the whole thing just sounded really stupid. But until I had evidence to suggest that it wasn't as dangerous as they said it was, and because I also knew historically, quite often viruses, when they show up, no matter why they were brought into manifestation, are often more dangerous at the beginning before they water down. So that was where my focus was. And then sort of later into 2020, in spring, no, it's actually shortly thereafter that. So I had made my first attempt to disconnect from Sophie Trudeau on September 27th, 2019. I remember it very well. And then she made a fuss, so I stayed connected. And then in 2020, I knew in 2021 my plan was to build a podcast, write another book, and I like to sort of clear the field of anything that feels fucked up in my life before I get into a really focused process. So in the spring of 2020, I said, why don't you look over all the emails with her and decide if you want to keep this relationship in your life, or you want to clear it so you can get back to what you really want to be doing. And as I proceeded in the process, for various reasons that I get into in the book, I decided to disconnect, make a second effort to disconnect. And so I think the relationship between COVID and I suppose that decision-making process is I was kind of stuck in the house. And I just had more time not moving around the world to sit down and pay closer attention to things that were bothering me, as many people did. So many people have changed as a result of being stuck in their homes, and not being able to run off and escape to do the things they do to avoid themselves, and had to realize all kinds of things about themselves and about the cultural world we live in. But I don't think my really entering into the space that you've entered into, where you see it as something called a plandemic, however you want to language it, as a manipulated psyop, basically. I think that started to happen more as a result of my 54-month techno terror nightmare. When I began to realize that my story, the need to contain my story, the people behind the containment of my story, intersect brilliantly and perfectly, in my view, with the larger landscape of psyop manipulation that we're facing as a species. To me, it's all the same thing. And as my story has progressed, and maybe I'll read what I mentioned to you earlier now. As a result of all kinds of different steps and stages in this process, I've announced the book. I have been told by somebody who's connected to the, let's say, the spy world, but credibly so, and I think may actually be the person who has been the MILDEC, military deception person, who may have been in charge of my situation for all I know. Lovely guy, but he's told me a number of things, and one of the things he's told me is that they're not so concerned about the book. The book has been read. They're concerned about everything else that I know. And at some point, I want to read those and get those on the record, because now I'm actually more frightened than I ever was before, because I understand that whatever it is they're concerned I know connects on a larger level to the things that you're talking about.
Right. So do you think it's just the, you had a very substantial audience, Jeff. You had incredible engagement. Like I said, you jumped into the internet before it was highly rigged and suppressed and censored and shadow banned and all those kind of things that are very normal these days. honestly, when I go out into the wild, into the world, and I hear people are like watching my podcast and people are hearing what's going on, but I'll get off a live stream and there's less views than there were people on the live stream. I can actually refresh a video and watch the views go down. So, why am I special? I often ask myself that, like, I'm
Because you
just
because you
talking
call it
about.
a pandemic. I mean, why? Of course you're on the list. There's absolute. I can tell you. I know many things now. I can just tell you with absolute certainty, Beth is on the list. And the manipulation of those numbers for these particular people. I mean, I've had 5 or 6 phones since this started. I know all about this. I've had 7 or 8 or 9 computers. This is basic level stuff for them to go in and manipulate views and
But
whatever's
just to
happened.
point,
Yeah,
but just to point out that you had a ginormous audience, right?
I still
And that was obvious.
yeah. So let me say this. So before this started, before not before this started, before the shadow banning actively started on Meta, I would think I was around 750,000 followers between all the groups and pages. And now I'm probably down to about 725. So God bless my followers and supporters. They know what's going on. I've been posting about it for years. And many of them have not, most of them have not left me. And it may be the reason they don't increase apart from the shadow banning. So if I did an analysis, it's in the book. It was like August of some year, and the average number of shares on a post on my fan page or support, whatever you call those pages, business pages now on Facebook, was 1,000 to 2,000 shares. So now it was down to half. Now go over to facebook.com/soulshaping and take a look at 20 shares, 40 shares, 60 shares, all deliberate, absolutely deliberate. And they've done it through, I cover it in the book, many different mechanisms to do it. But it isn't that I've lost so many supporters, it's that the growth is not occurring. Like I was growing 1,000 to 2,000 without doing anything special on the business page. My Instagram was at 112,000, growing 1 to 2,000 a week. It's down to 106. Part of that is because I'm pro-Israel. I lost a few thousand people because of my position. I know that. But basically, my stuff just isn't moving. Go look at when I put up a political post about this book, go on Instagram and look how they literally have somebody on me 24/7. I have evidence of that. And they literally squelch and contain the posts that they don't want to reach to anybody. And they also, in my view, make sure they don't reach the famous people on my list. Like this book, I cover this 120,000 word document here that shows exactly how they do this. And my position is, and I brought this to the SEC now, and I'm not done. I'm going to keep at it. And they got back to me, is that what Amazon and Meta are doing, particularly Meta, is they have a fiduciary duty as public companies to maximize shareholder profits. If they are limiting an advertiser through all kinds of mechanisms, so I am no longer comfortable advertising because I'm not getting enough money back to justify it, that is affecting shareholder profits. They are absolutely acting in a manner incongruent. It is illegal to do this. And I don't know if anyone has brought this particular argument to the SEC because it's a very unique. Normally, they bring sort of like inside information about what's going on with manipulation of stock prices. My argument is they are undermining shareholder profit by fucking with Jeff Brown. So we'll see what happens with that.
Okay, I don't totally get the conclusion, how they can
Well,
mess
the
with
idea is
the.
they have a fiduciary duty to maximize shareholder profits. So if I'm not advertising because it's not functional or useful, it doesn't make a living for me to advertise because of the things they're doing, then that is the money they would have made for me would have contributed to shareholder profits. Americans take shareholder profits very seriously. It means all those shareholders, even because of one guy, and it's not just this one guy, as a result of that, are not making as much money as they should be making for owning those shares. That's hardcore against the law in the US. You can't do that. You have to let me do what I do so that people can make the most amount of money from owning shares and taking a chance on purchasing those shares in the United States of America. That's how it works there. So, the problem is these monopolies. America was never supposed to have monopolies, but look what's happened. And they've been making all kinds of efforts to deal with it, but we have to find the right arguments in order to tear these monopolies apart. So maybe this might be one of those arguments. We'll see.
Okay. So would you conclude that it comes down to financials then, that's their end game? Like one of the things I've observed in some cases my own life as well, where in the past 5 years in particular, getting approached by particular groups and many individuals from that group and trying to get me on board. Tammy Truther here knows a lot about that, and so there seems to be a certain effort to assimilate, right? That they try to draw you in. There's often a lot of accolades and
Or they,
flattery
which
and
they,
offering
what's
of
the they?
opportunity. Well, there's many versions of they. So you could call them the globalists. You could talk about in Canada the Asmin Nation in particular. I don't know if I'm going to get flagged for that one. That they for some reason had me pegged. I was approached by many different ASMIN members. Some would admit to that. It became clear at some point that they were members of the UN and affiliated with the UN in many ways. So the whole trend of globalization, trying to destroy local leadership and start implementing, this global scamdemic kind of situation where, for the first time in history, they did something that affected nearly everybody on Earth, but that wasn't even the total truth of it. That was the PR of it, the appearance of it, though still they made incredible headway. I'm just curious what you consider to be the end game of your perpetrators in particular. So whether they come through, obvious puppets in the government that are really not the kings, right? Like, so I'm all over the king archetype, and we were talking about this in the House of Free Will the other day, my private association, about how those leaders that we see, whether it was Trudeau or the other characters in the show, are actually not the kings, right? There's kings behind them. They appear to be the kings, the tyrants in the shadow, right? And so I'm just curious what your interpretation of, like, what are they trying to accomplish, maybe specifically with you?
Oh, the purpose of all of this with me was ideally for me to die. Number one was to die. Um,
Okay.
Ideally to die by suicide, so they could claim that all of the things that I claimed to be true were a function of a mental health issue. Um, Third place option would be for me to go mad as a result of the onslaught of techno terror, which would drive most people crazy, and to get me inside of a special place with special medication. And this is what they've been doing to whistleblowers, the Martha Mitchell effect. They haul them into mental health places. It's really the best thing to do for them. It's the only thing for them to do. In my case, it's not that useful. My stuff is in many people's hands. It's so well documented. It's just dumb. It's just dumb, and all it does is pisses me off to go get even more fucking information about them. So that's what the goal of it is for me. They're not trying to. I mean, I was in there. I was sending stuff through. I sent stuff through her for the PMO during the 2019 election. I was sending words and ideas through for her to use in her public outreach. They didn't have to do
So,
anything to try to get
Sophie
me
Trudeau,
to Sophie
sorry,
Trudeau.
that
They didn't,
Sophie. Okay, yeah.
yeah, they didn't have to do anything to get me in there. But once I got to know something about what I was dealing with, I didn't hate her. I just didn't want to be there. Once I began to understand that, then I wanted out. What I didn't realize is you're not allowed to get out once you have a certain amount of information. I was invited there by her in 2018, April, to we had a lunch together for about a 45 minutes or an hour, just the two of us in their house. And that was quite an experience. That really has shaped all of this. And then we shot a video. She wanted me to bring my ideas through. And, when I left that house, I felt incredibly uncomfortable because of things that were shared with me. Whether I was formally a national security risk or informally a political security risk, I don't know. I've been told many different things. And so this was never about this 54-month campaign of terror was never about trying to bring me back. She tried a little in the beginning with the emails and the one phone call she insisted upon to try to get me to stay connected. And I agreed to because I was afraid not to, but didn't want to. That was after the second attempt. It was right after the second attempt to disconnect, and right before the first phone interception to frighten me into staying connected. But after that, really, they've just been trying to figure out a way to silence me in all the most thousands and thousands, and I say thousands of acts because I can prove that to be true on every level in every way imaginable. I've developed terms for what they do now: techno-terrorism, invisibilities, funneling of consciousness. I have been bearing witness to all of this stuff, but it's not because I'm an anti-vaxxer or any of those things. They have much bigger problem with me than just anti-vaxxer stuff. They're concerned about what I know about what you just talked about, which is who's behind who's behind the desperate, communistic, globalistic, unconscionable motherfucker quests for power and control, apart from unhealthy egos, abandoned children who never got attention, and all the rest of that. Like, what do they want is the real question. And why, if it's true that it's a pandemic, and I believe it was a pandemic, why are they doing this? What do they want? They want power and they want control and they want to take over the West. Why do they want that? Because they're people who need more power and more control, and they've holes in their egos that are way too big for anything to ever fill them. And they have absolutely they're so completely sociopathically fucked up. They have absolutely no regard for any other human beings. They're often celebrity culture obsessed. These are not human beings who ever developed a center. They have no center. There's no center to work from. There's no true moral compass. There's no true growthful actualizing tendency, other than if it serves them to say that to gain more favor with the audience. These are not human beings who ever developed an encoded awareness of why they're here in this lifetime and what they're here to bring to humanity. They're power over people. They're not service oriented people. If they out survive us, it's over, and it's over soon. And this moment in Canada in particular is the most crucial, deadly, horrifyingly dangerous moment I have ever witnessed in my 62 years on the planet. They want this country bad. Fortunately, the US is on our south border, and the US is not going to let them have it.
That would be nice. There's not a day that goes by I don't want to move and be in the US, move to there. I was just going to ask about the, first of all, just to let you know about Mark Archer, who's an author who's written about the possibility that there was two atoms in creation. And the second one is more like the people you're talking about. Jennifer used the word psychopath. By the way, the anti-V word, that one's highly censorable, just so you know that, yeah, you just have to talk like children instead. And why do you think that they shared intel with you? Was that to entrap you so that you knew things that would make you afraid to leave?
Yeah, so there's two. So if we're talking about my interface with Sophie, I've never ever had a direct interface with her adolescent ex-husband. Indirect interfaces, let's say. I won't get into that right now. But so Sophie just shared personal things with me about her life and her marriage. Nothing to do with what you would call traditional political intelligence.
Okay.
Flirtations, etc., etc. But as a result of 54 months of talking to people to try to help myself in a situation where nobody in the Canadian system would help me, that's when information gets transferred. Because the Canadian media, there are very few, as we discussed earlier, real investigative journalists. This is not the US. They think like writing a piece about how it's not exactly yogurt, there's a little bit more milk in it, is like high level investigative journalism. It's not. It's helpful, but it's not what we need in this country, especially right now. There's only really Sam Cooper is the only one that I can think of, and one other one who I still have hope for, and I hope he's listening, because I've given you stuff to follow up on. Okay, please do it. But apart from that, there's nobody here. So But what they do, because they are upset, some of them, that their editors and publishers wouldn't let them publish, is they start talking to people like me about everything they know. They know almost everything, but they're not allowed to publish it. And they're afraid to go off like Sam courageously did, start his own journalistic newspaper called The Bureau, and go out on his own and do it so he could say what he knows to be true. We don't have very much of that in this country. This is not all the president's men, for fuck's sakes. So, I got information from all kinds of places in all kinds of different ways. And some of it I just figured out for myself because I'm trying to figure out a way to stay alive. And the only thing that keeps me alive is information. But Sophie didn't tell me anything that I recall of any significance about like an inside info about this messed up political world, or who put Justin in that place, or why Justin married Sophie, or any of those things. That kind of information came from other locations.
Okay. All right. And do you think Sophie was threatened by what she had shared with you? Again, like why open up like that? Do you think it was a manipulation of some kind? Because that's, you're describing
Like
a different kind of person.
triangulation, or why did she open up with me?
Was she in love with you? Like what was going on?
You'd have to ask her. I mean, I've written a book. I tell my story. She can write her own story. I'm comfortable saying there were flirtations, a number of consistent flirtations directed at me from the Prime Minister's wife. Yes. Did I think when I was going there to see her for the filming and the meal that that's why she brought me? Because of something emailed to me not a few days or a few weeks before, I was a little worried. But my thing with these people was I sort of felt like in the self-help spiritual writing part of it, at least, sort of like kind of an uncle, right? Like, and it was very clear that these Justin and Sophie, in my view, were simply not qualified to be in that building. He didn't have the experience, he didn't have the intellect, he doesn't have the education. And she, as for a number of reasons I didn't believe, was solid enough to be there either, just because of what I experienced with her. And so I had a habit, which was maybe not a good thing, of just putting away everything that was bothering me to focus on my volunteer agenda, which was to bring good, wise words and ideas through for the gender-related stuff, gender equality, self-help stuff, the stuff that he was inching into and she was going on about. I mean, I never saw a leading lady in Canada out there doing stuff like her before. And a lot of that stuff, I was sort of transmitting words and ideas and quotes and different things. So I just try to ignore everything else until I couldn't ignore it anymore, basically. And I would say that in her kitchen, I was uncomfortable because of what was shared with me. I don't think that she was in a state, I would say, of agitation, needing somebody to share this with, not in a state where she could properly understand what that might do to a citizen to be holding that information, something called boundaries. Mm-hmm. And because I was so fixated on holding the words and ideas for the video that I was trying to bring through and do my family and my country proud, it was just like not this place to go, can you please stop? Slow down, stop, let's have a meal. I want to do this video right. I just held the space for it. And it was clear that she was not in a very happy place. And for whatever reason, she wanted me to know that she was not in a very happy place in her marriage. Did she want me to know that so I would think she was available? That didn't really occur to me so much. But it was, Beth, I'll just put it to you this way. It was so messy that all I could do was I drove out of the compound. I left. I didn't want to stay in case he showed up for dinner. So I didn't want to be at a table with him knowing all this stuff. And so I just drove around. I needed gas. I was so ungrounded from the intensity of this experience that I just kept driving around Ottawa I know I kept passing gas stations, but I couldn't process there's a gas station because I didn't know what to do with myself. Because on the way there, and I've shared that excerpt on my Substack newsletter, the Enrollment newsletter, I was so delighted and so emotional and so honored that somebody from my shtetl family, my peripheral family, was going to be with royalty. And then I drove out of that house and thought, why the fuck were you so proud and feel so honored to go into that house when you didn't even know who these people were? And when I myself had a lot more things to be proud of than, in my view, they did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Could I ask you a hard question?
They're all hard questions. Yeah.
They're all hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to that moment you wrote about in the description of your book of, when you hit send on an email, you reached out, and would you go back and not do that?
So after this experience, so I would have until very recently said there's not a chance in a million years I would have reached out to her to ask. So she shared my work in Facebook in 2017. And I had a voice on my head and said, she's trying to pull you towards her. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, this is an honor. This is a privilege. This is an amazing thing. So I had a friend who had given her my books and had sort of started all of this. And I could write through to her to try to get to Sophie and say, if you need some help with volunteering, I'll do that, because I wanted to. I had read this great book. You have to read this book called Brother of the Third Degree, really old book, where there's these people who are like whispering in the ears of power to create a more benevolent world. And I remember reading that thinking, that'd be cool. I kind of like to do that. And so then this happened. So forever I've said I absolutely would have listened to my intuition and not written that fucking email at that FedEx at Yonge and Eglinton in Toronto, which no longer exists, although my miserable situation does, which is ironic. But as a result of things that have happened in the last few weeks, when I'm now beginning to believe, perhaps mistakenly, that this is not just a Jeff Brown crucible, but that whatever this is a collective crucible where I am serving some strangely divine purpose. Because who else has enough Jewish masochism, intelligence, and intensity and fortitude to survive this than me? Who'd be stupid enough to survive this but me? So I was in Jerusalem and I was like, what is this? Why am I in this? I was thriving as a creativist. I was beautiful. And now I'm over here with this thing. But now over the last few weeks, I'm legitimately wondering if this was absolutely meant to be and guided by something that was absolutely beyond my control. Yes.
Wow.
But this is the first time that's happened in the longest time. Yeah.
Wow. Great answer. It'd be so tempting to go, yeah, if I had the chance to go back and undo it, I would undo it. But that's what true purpose is, right? Where you, along the way of even the worst meaningless calamity, you turn it into a thing. You turn it into a thing of power and purpose.
Sometimes. I mean, I think my work around grounded was to get nuanced about that question, right? Like when is it just a bad thing that happened, that you could still maybe convert into something good, but you still wish it hadn't happened at the end of the day? And when are there some leelas that occur for some other reason? You don't always know that when you're in it. You don't always ever know that. Maybe you don't figure that out till the next lifetime. But I mean, I think if not for Susan's suffering, I think if I would have done it differently and we had been together and all this, everything was the same, I would have had to find a way to get her out of harm's way quicker. Because we both suffered medical calamities because of these events quite seriously. So
right, and just to
I
let
would have
the
had to
audience
figure
know,
that out.
right, just to let the audience know, Susan is your wife.
Yes.
Right, yeah, Jeff's wife. There you go. Yeah, it's intense, and so that's a big subject in terms of, I don't buy the calamities are meant to be thing. That's just my take on it, where I've landed with it. And people would say after I survived cancer that, oh, it was so meant to be that you got sick with a stage 4 lymphoma, you nearly lost your life, and now you're teaching and coaching and helping people in this way. And I'll just hold to the fact that that was a big fat mistake, a major mistake. Things did not need to get so extreme and out of control in my life. I could have made decisions. We always see the writing on the wall a little bit. You've got a good, when I say writing on the wall, you've got a good vignette from the past about that. And, but it's your power. It's your living, breathing ability as a soul to take that and make something out of it that can be full of purpose and service, which I know you value highly. So it's
I do. I mean, I do, and it's sometimes it's a situation where you're being nudged along by some internal knowing. It could also be you have a masochistic component, and you're being pushed along by something outside of you. I can just tell you that people in the field who know my story to some extent, nobody will really know it till they read the story. But investigators have said we don't know what to do with you. They don't know what to do with you. Most people, after we start intimidating them, they hide in their houses, and you've been going on for years. And this is not normal. Nothing about this is normal. And not to give me any credit, I mean, partly they never met my mother. So I mean, if they'd met my mother, they know I had 20 years of this shit. We're only into 4 years and 5 months so far. I got another 15 years and 7 months just to tie with my childhood. There's that, but I also think what happens a lot of times is you just move in the increment of the moment. Like, you step away from it, and then they come after you. The house alarm goes off at 3 a.m. after the cops leave the house. Another way they communicate. So then you're hooked back in, and so there's hundreds and hundreds of moments of step back, and maybe because their game is to always keep coming at you. These are not brilliant people that are attuned to your psyche. They're just basic level game. They play the same game, and it works 95% of the time. If it doesn't work for the other 5%, they lose, but they still win 95% of the time. So you just go in increments. So I've stepped back at different times, and then they start back in again. And so I suppose I have a choice to just back out. But because I was told by various people in the field that once it crossed a certain point, my life was going to always be in danger if I didn't stand up for myself and go public. And I also was told by one or two very prominent people that if I backed off because of their concern about information that I had, the bigger picture information, Susan was at risk, and I'm a protective firstborn Jew. So I stayed in it partly because I felt, rightly or wrongly, like that was the only way to protect her from the situation. Bottom line is, if you go into the political world, understand before you step into it, you're not allowed to leave. You leave on their terms, not on your terms. You need to really understand this. You need to really get this and make the decision before you step in with that information in mind. I did not understand that. Most people you tell the story to, they go, "Of course, Jeff Brown, you're not allowed to leave. You were told things you witnessed things." But I'm like, I got rights. I can fucking leave. And I was like the uncle in my perception with these wild kids or something. I thought, there's no way anything could happen to me. Well, I was absolutely wrong. I did not know. And this is not about Sophie and Justin Trudeau. This is about whoever handles all of this.
exactly.
I did not know how fucking dark this is. Canada is going to be in for quite a shock. Americans are like, yeah, well, that sounds like every day in America, but not Canadians. These are the darkest motherfuckers on the planet. They get off on triggering and tormenting people. They're probably all addicts, for God's sakes, just to get through their days. But these are nasty, gnarly people that you do not want to have I often, near my phones, because they're on my phones, I often talk to them and say, you really have to find your calling. I do a whole sacred purpose lecture, to remind them they're better than this. I literally try to convert them. I hope one day at the end of all this, if I survive, one of them shows up and goes, you converted 7 of us to Christianity, 2 to Judaism, and 4 to sacred purpose, buddy. You're fucking amazing. But so far they haven't. I have no such information so far.
It's possible they don't have that capacity. That's what I was saying about the 2 atoms. Like that, that's the problem when you try to understand psychopaths, in what you're talking about from our own perspective. It just makes no sense. And we can't think like that. Like, unless you're so incredibly damaged to the point of having none of your own experience anymore, you've evacuated, dissociated, you don't feel pain. We can't imagine being like that, right? We have a conscience, we have a sense of what's right and what's wrong, and it doesn't matter how much indoctrination that you get along the way, that's still active. There's always going to be that voice in you that knows you're causing someone else pain, and it's not right. But these people
I
don't
think
seem
of
to
it.
have that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think of it in terms of Parts work and IFS and Dick Schwartz's work, and I just think that we all exist in various parts and aspects. Just some have more integration at the heart of it, and others are more like just jigsaw puzzles that just don't assemble properly because of lack of development in certain areas and tremendous degrees of trauma in other areas, and end up living their life through this kind of quest for substitute gratifications without ever realizing that you can reach a place over time where you get gratified by doing good stuff, um, instead of by doing bad stuff. And it's important to mention they're very well paid. So these are people who often wouldn't make this kind of money based on their educational status. They
Exactly.
get paid $3,000 US to get on your phone. So if they get on 10 phones in a day, they made $30,000 US. That's tempting, especially for people who grew up without a strong economic foundation. And we have to find a way to create more encoded pathways of career possibility in our world that actualize our great gifts and callings and are service oriented, so that people won't be so tempted to make crazy amounts of money doing really nasty and shitty things. Yeah. I think
Indeed.
it's really complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about your nurture side, just listening to some of your not that old videos, maybe in the past year, and you like to do encoding sessions. I noticed you had a shirt that says encoding, and it's a beautiful thing. And you have a very caring side. You care about people. You've expressed great care for your wife and
It's
protecting.
terrible, isn't it? It's just terrible. I mean, I'm doing everything after this experience. So many people close to me betrayed me. So many got that I've known closely or not so closely, but somewhat, who have been connected to by these characters, these operators, and have, whether they were volunteered to do it, were paid to do it, or were scared into what would happen if they didn't do it because they had compromise on them. The whole country's being controlled now by compromise. That's what they're doing. They,
I'm not familiar with that.
I've been so disappointed. I'll tell you in a second. I've been so disappointed in humanity, and I'm Jewish. I've been so disappointed in my people, North American Jews, because they're so scared. The Christians have helped me more than anyone's helped me in this situation, which absolutely startled me. But despite all of that, I love humanity. Despite all of this horror, I don't. I just still think we got a shot. I don't feel as hopeful as I used to be because of the technology and because the manipulation and polarization, algorithmic polarization of human consciousness by these so-called smartphones. Nothing smart about them. Most dangerous weapons, psyop weaponry in human history to polarize human consciousness. And there's no center anymore. Nobody can sit down at a table with someone who has another view and be interested in the view. That's classic divide and conquer to the power of 1,000 now. And
Yeah.
if we don't wake down, in Sanyal Bonder's terms, to finally understand, we have got to re-brave right now. And we have got to create whistleblower legislation in every area of society, so that they have some of it in the US. They all have almost none of it in this country, this monarchistic country. Don't forever believe you have some great Western democracy in Canada. There are very few. Trump does all kinds of kooky things, but they can contain him because they actually have systems in place to contain it when it goes too far. We don't have those in Canada. You can do anything you want in Canada. Trudeau, they do whatever they want. They have a list of 12 of them that are compromised by the Chinese that they won't reveal, and they keep saying Pierre won't get security clearance. They know he can't get security clearance in the situation because then he'll be arrested if he provides the information. Trudeau could provide the information without getting arrested and didn't provide it. There's so much bewilderment now, deliberately, as part of this chaos creating globalist, communist, great reset requires a great falling apart fucking game that they're playing in this communist coup that we are right. There's no budget, for fuck's sakes. He's not bringing a budget. What more do you fucking need to know about communism? This is exactly what's going on in the country. If we don't realize what's happening, God bless you, my fellow boomers, with your lovely little elbows up. You were lied to. This guy is the last guy who's going to protect any Canadian's rights. He's going to merge with Europe, not because America is a horrible thing. God bless America at our border, for fuck's sakes, because he's already started to create the communist chaotic structure in France and the UK that he wants us to bridge to. And all the elbows up boomers are going, wow, this is really wonderful. We're going to be less dependent on America. No, you're going to be blended with Chinese Communist Party jihadists. Okay, that's what you're going to be blended with. And it's going to force America militarily to cross the border. Pierre was our only hope, for God's sake. It's so close now. And we got to realize what's happening, because it's happening right before our eyes. And Sam Cooper can't be the only guy telling the story. Somebody else has to tell the story about what's happening in this country. I love this country. What a beautiful, spacious country to grow up in. And look what's happened. And look how quickly it's happened, for God's sakes. Good God.
Yeah, tragic for the next generation in particular.
Good God.
Yeah. It's madness. That's madness. I want to just go back to that helping spirit that you have, and I've done a very big deep dive into the nurturer in particular as an archetype. And I'm curious if, in fact, Sophie was approaching you at that level, that she wanted that. Like, was there maybe part of her was looking for healing and some kind of breakthrough, or am I off base?
Well, I mean, I think part of what she was attracted to was my work, like my reading, my writing, Apologies to the Divine Feminine, which she read, and the healing component of the work, my attempt to bridge spirituality with healing and recognition of trauma, and all of those things. I think there was a I mean, we'd have to. I mean, I would like to say we'd have to ask her, but I don't know that we'd ever really, in this situation, get a straight answer. I mean, I feel like the book. I don't write the book in a way that's. I'm just trying to stay true to the facts. Truth is the gateway to the moment for me. That's all I've got in a situation like this. And the techno terror game is to divert you from the truth, so that you're swimming in an ocean of anxiety. So my work is to stay in the truth. So people will read it and will decide for themselves what was Sophie Trudeau's motive, and what does Sophie Trudeau have to learn from this, and is she going to? There was a story told, I should just say, like after I first called it into the Hamilton police, the first phone interception. They came very excited, and then they were gone. A year later, my newspaper guy came with a well-known investigator from Toronto. I call him Heroic Helper in the book, and and said, "What do you mean they were gone with this story? How could they just be gone?" So he went to Hamilton and apparently was told that the reason they backed off was because the RCMP said that I had been stalking Mrs. Trudeau. I don't know how you stalk a first lady of a country living behind gates in Ottawa. It's a bit stupid, and it's completely false. I was the one who attempted to disconnect. So I provided all the emails, and he brought them, and then we started an investigation. It got called off again. So, I would like nothing more for her than to show up publicly and to tell that story, so I can sue her in about 1 second. I don't think she's going to tell that story. I don't know that she ever told the RCMP that story. Somebody else may have told the RCMP that story. That is now under a formal in-house investigation, because I brought that through the system. I haven't heard back from that cop in 13 or 14 months. I can't find the Proton email account I had, so I can't access him, but he has my number. I don't know what happened with that, but the only reason to make sense of the fact that they backed off was somebody said something that wasn't true, because they backed off. So that's the level of what's happened here. And so getting straight answers out of anybody who is part of the story on that side of the ledger, I don't know if we're ever going to get straight answers from any of them. You'd have to ask her.
Yeah, it's just conjecture and my own personal interest.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
How I've known you as well. So what do you mean by techno terror? What does that actually look like in your daily life? Is it happening every day, all day, or is that more of the past?
Well, ever since I announced the book, they've slowed down slightly, which is sometimes worrisome. So techno-terrorism, I mean, I have a definition for it on Urban Dictionary. Just in the old days, what these people would do is they would follow you, so you wouldn't drive home the same way. They would befriend you at libraries. They've still done that. And then you'd realize later they were trying to get info. They're not your friends. And so I've been through this stuff. Cops follow you. I've had cops follow me. People on the phone doing phone things with machine guns. I've had that too. I have that up on Twitter, the link to that. The techno-terrorists more what they start doing in the internet. So they get into the computers and start manipulating data. They get into places you just go. They sort of want to fuck up your day. So you go and punch in at Bell Canada to pay your bill, and the passwords are all gone. You get warnings on your computers and laptops aren't functioning. You can't work in a Word document. You can't access the writing, the actual manuscript for this book. It's not accessible any longer. You go on social media, there's endless number of fan pages, fake pages that are trying to connect with you, to communicate miserable and negative commentary about you. They're all over your pages. They're writing you directly. They're trying to friend you. They go inside of your messenger. They go inside of your Facebook, all of your past 12, 15 years to contact anybody you ever had a contact with, any woman you were involved with, any woman you didn't want to be involved with, anybody you flirted with, anyone who flirted with you, to get information. Then they have them come after you and start connecting in your mind to go, oh, they're trying to tell me about my past. They do so you get strange messages on your text about vile smear campaigns are coming, defamation is coming, threats of incarceration. Then you go to the coffee shop and the guy from CBC comes over who's followed by a minister in the Liberal caucus, and clearly is put up to it probably by them, to warn you that it doesn't go very well for whistleblowers because they're not in the circle of power and they stare in your eyes. So, and then you go home and you open your phone and there's a bunch of texts with words that are related to what was said to let you know that they're everywhere you go. It's very important for them, for me, to let you know that they're everywhere you go. So techno terror is not just surveillance, because what Kash Patel, who founded, was running the FBI, went through for 5 years. He didn't know till Google told him 5 years later he'd been under surveillance. My situation was much worse. I'm a civilian, I'm unprotected, I'm being surveyed, but I'm also being attacked, intimidated, harassed, blocked, my books blocked, shadow banned so I can't grow, insulted and disparaged everywhere I am, and being fake friend wherever I walk to. So it's all happening together. And techno terrorism is the way, if we want to talk about the kid in Vancouver who drove into the Filipinos, that would be a good example of how somebody's consciousness could have been funneled and influenced through certain imagery that appear before them on the sidebar of their email, through social media interfaces, through texts from strangers, to lead them in direction of choosing to act in a way that they never would have acted otherwise. That's techno terrorism. That's how they're controlling consciousness right now.
Right. Yeah, it's happening at every level, maybe some benign. Kind of I look out and this isn't Technoca, but there's a billboard across the street and it brainwashes me for a month or 60 days or however long that billboard is up. And so that's not new, but the capacity
That's
with
basic,
technology. Yeah, the
right?
capacity with technology, it's on steroids. Obviously, they have a great deal more mobility and changeability and you know can muck with stuff. I at times felt like that was happening to me, maybe at a smaller scale than what you're describing. There was a term that
It
you used.
depends what the goal is, Beth. It depends what they want from
Mhm.
you, right?
Okay.
With me, they want me to die, suicide, or go mad. So you have to keep coming, never
Yeah.
stop. For
Yeah.
you, they may want to back you off a little, but they don't maybe want to go too far. They don't want to put that much money into it unless you're a threat to the larger landscape of who's behind Mr. Manchurian Candidate. That's a whole different. They have to put a lot more money into that and to those people.
Mhm.
Synagogues, attacked, churches attacked, jewelry stores attacked. Who paid for those attackers? I have evidence in the book, in my view, that one synagogue, my bar mitzvah synagogue, was attacked because of a post I put up right before that, and that the two jewelry stores related to engagement rings with Susan were attacked right after posts. So I believe there's a direct linkage between this, some administration, and all of these various things. I don't believe they're arbitrary. That's not exactly techno terror, But if it's being inspired by public posting, it starts to all weave together into the same insane situation and system. Yeah.
Right.
So
And with,
I won't get
mhm,
too far into what I know, but I will just say that techno-terrorism is now the terrorism. You can kill people with techno-terrorism a lot easier and a lot quieter than you could do it the other way. If that person who killed themselves because they were exposed to a succession of particular ruses, which is a term in um, military deception, MILDEC term, ruses and feints. So they keep showing all kinds of stuff that leads that psyche over time into a particular direction to act in a certain manner. There's no evidence of it. It's a
mhm.
dream for these people to be able to utilize these systems to funnel human consciousness. Yeah, billboard's a different thing, buy something. But now they actually can actualize the intention to destroy somebody, which is a completely different thing.
Right, right.
Those phones, once they've got you, if you then become somebody that they're concerned about, it's much easier to lead you in that direction. And that's why those smartphones were such an important part of this whole game to create a divide and conquer consciousness in the Western world.
Right, right. And with the goal of destabilizing, isolating, like you say, dividing other people that would otherwise be allied. Is
Yeah,
that
so
correct? Or that?
the two primary goals they all talk about that I've spoken with, the first was to isolate me, turn everybody against me, make them think I'm crazy, give them money, isolate me from friends and family. Then the next thing is to do something, roost you into going crazy. Isolation can make you go crazy, something called going crazy. Or have you believe that something is happening that may or may not be happening with your wife, for example, or some good friend of yours, so that you become so hopeless that you decide to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, right?
Mhm,
That's what we're
mhm.
talking about. So isolation and various things to try to lead you in the direction of being crazy, so that if you show up crazy, there's nobody there to help you. And they can easily usher you into the psychiatric system with nobody there with any wisdom or awareness or real heart center connection to protect you. Um, Rob Whitepond, Canadian journalist, wrote, I can't remember the name of the book recently, a great book about this. He went through this with his father, and not the techno terror aspect of it, but the nature of that system. I'm wondering if the roots of psychiatry really were originally, if it was designed with this in mind, to be able to contain political and economic whistleblowers. It makes absolutely perfect sense to me.
Right. And Jennifer in the chat said to MK Ultra, which I've had that phrase in my mind as you've been talking as well. And that to me, the psychiatric system and the MK Ultra just go hand in hand,
So
right?
what? Just
Because
tell me what MK Ultra is exactly.
it's trauma-based mind control, where
Yeah,
they pair up
yeah,
supposedly opposing pain and pleasure are the two classic ingredients, and then that's how they break down the psyche through the pain, and
yeah,
then the confusion with the pleasure,
yeah.
and then
Right.
so the person comes out and it erodes their self-concept. It erodes all of the normal human reactions that you would have. It keeps you dissociated from, because you
Right.
end up sustaining so many wounds that you can't tolerate being in
That's right.
the pain
A
of
human.
that.
You can't tolerate being human anymore. Susan
That's
kept
right.
using the term. Susan kept saying she felt depersonalized. I, of course,
Right.
felt depersonalized. So, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
This is so much a part of the game. And people now talk about the God voice, that they're able to actually get a voice in your head interfacing with you, or at least sending language through, messaging through into the mind. And I'm not going to get into my views on that, but I share something that happened during what I thought was a prescription misadventure in the autumn of 2023. That was their first, second, third attempt to get me declared crazy. It didn't work out. I stopped taking the pills and I was myself again. But I'm now wondering a little bit more about the interpretation. I remember the mainstream doctor said, Jeff, we've never seen anything like this. And now I'm wondering if it was because it was something more than a prescription misadventure that led to this radical shift in my thinking and my behavior and my consciousness. And I leave that for the readers. because there are a lot of web sleuths that can figure it out for me that I'm not going to be able to figure it out. But this notion of, manipulating human consciousness to affect certain goals is part of the sales and marketing world. We know that. All you have to do is add a nefarious intention to it, and all kinds of nuanced and interesting new technological systems, cutting edge military systems that governments know about, the elites know about, nobody else knows about. And you can absolutely get anybody to drive a car into anybody at a festival, anybody to get on top of a building and try to shoot at the president, anybody to do almost anything, and they have absolutely no way of evidentially proving why it is that they did that, because they don't even know how it happened to them. This is
Yeah.
scary stuff.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
scary stuff.
Do you consider yourself a targeted individual by
Yes,
that definition? You
yes,
do.
I'm a
Yeah.
target.
Yeah. And
That's
you
I'm,
know
I'm
that.
going to have a targeted. I have a targeted individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that, and that whole world, like it's a very specific term that refers to, if you Google that one, you're going to get a whole load of stuff. So yeah, it's let's see, a few more chats here. This is happening to more than, or this is happening more than people think. I have 3,000
Yeah.
attempts every day from
Yeah.
different VPNs
Oh,
around the
it's huge.
world
Yeah.
to try to crack
Yeah.
my email. Sorry to hear that. They were successful once. Wow, out of 3,000. And we do live in a dystopia. Luca, you got it. I don't know if this sentence is finished. Darian also said, "What is their goal and why you?" I guess, well, that is a whole sentence. Why you? We sort of kind of went over it. I don't know if you have anything more to say about that.
I mean, I think at first it was just things that were shared with me, and perhaps things I had contributed politically, not wanting that to get in the hands of the conservatives, that a self-help writer contributed, maybe something like that. And things that were shared with me and things that were expressed to me. But as this thing unfolded, as other systems, banks, uh, large phone companies, Meta, Amazon, police obstructions, they fucked up, the RCMP fucked up, media suppression in Canada, it's all part of this book. It seems to me it became absolutely mandatory now for them to take it to the next level and use every device humanly. If somebody reads this book, they're going to read it and they're going to, first of all, not know how the hell I survived. But the other thing they're going to notice is there are hundreds of methodologies that my story exposes that I think humanity all needs to know about, that sometimes can all be happening at the same time.
Right, right. So you're still on Amazon. It was just the one book that they took down?
No, so Humanifestations, they sent them all back. We distribute in Canada. I had
Mm-hmm.
various efforts getting a buy box up with the US distributor in the US suddenly,
Mm-hmm.
never before a problem. The UK, you could buy Humanifestations, but only in a little swath of England, of London, but not everywhere worldwide. Same to Hearticulations, a sister book. I went into the Canadian system at some point. It was restricted. My other books weren't getting ordered. We used to, I think we were selling, I can't be sure, but 80 or 100 a month and just in Canada books. And then we were down to like 8 or 10 or 12 books a month. And but it was working with the shadow banning, because if I couldn't market there, if I put a book, I built on my quotes. That's how I built in social media. People loved my quotes, and I would get so many shares, and then I would sell my books. As I said, why do I need another publisher? I'll make $1 a book, and I'll make $5 a book if I do it myself. So I would run uncommon bond ads with those potent quotes. But if those quotes are not moving anymore, not because people don't like them, but because they're not getting to see them,
Mm-hmm.
you can't run the ads off of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't sell as many books on Amazon. And whoever orchestrated it on all kinds of levels. So the whole thing starts to fall apart as a big, giant, fucked up, inedible stew. That's what they did. This is
Mm-hmm.
connected to this. If I go on this computer, somebody somewhere knows I did, because suddenly something at Meta shows up. It's all absolutely connected. And the book ties all those things together. So that's what happened. Once everybody got involved, everybody had an incentive to make sure that I could never tell the story. And now I and a big time effort was made in the few months before I just announced the book to pull a particular ruse that I believed, a particular thing that would have led most people to suicide. In fact, I didn't suicide, and instead it freed me, strangely enough, for all kinds of reasons I discuss in the book, to announce the book. And so now I don't think they know what to do with me. And so I would just like to read these quick things that somebody wrote me who may be the one behind all of this, or maybe somebody who wants to help me. We don't really know because they friend you and give you information that only they could have, and you don't know what their motivation is. I hope he has good intentions because I like him, but I always like them. So I just want to read these 3 texts because I want this on the record. This is where I am right now, and I'm actually more anxious now than I was before announcing the book because of this. These are 3 texts from this individual who is part of that world. I think he's a MILDEC guy, which is a military deception guy. So he says, like we discussed, any intimate details or knowledge you may have needs to stay locked in your head with contingencies in place. That's what keeps you alive. That's what gives you leverage. They're going to keep squeezing you to see if you start to publish the things they're looking for. Then they have, it's not the book. He said they're okay with the book. Then they have a decision to make. They apply pressure for long enough, they figure you'll crack. There's no end to this kind of thing, to be blunt. As long as that evidence exists and they fear you have it, they will continue to force this thing to come to a head until either they can reasonably believe you have it or until they are satisfied you don't. And even then, you're still a loose end. And then I said, why would they want me to publish what they don't want published? It makes 0 sense. Because that tells them definitively how to deal with you and can be justified in their minds. They need those pieces to align. They're afraid of what they don't know. What they do know can't hurt them because they can take the proper steps to guard against it. So he's telling me that as the book is out, and now the real big question, which is what do I know and are they threatened on a much bigger level, comes into play. And based on the answer to that question, they decide whether to terminate me or leave me alone. This is the real fucking spy world on my phone in this interaction with this individual. So that's how far it goes when you push back. When you don't push back, I don't think you're ever safe. But maybe now and then, if it's not such a big story, they ultimately will let you go. But I am certain that I am only one out of possibly hundreds or thousands of people in Canada to varying degrees who are under fire from this particular politically motivated, on the left motivated group of people to silence, hinder, intimidate, oppress, or cause the death of a great number of people that are seen as legitimate threats to this globalist, communist, jihadist coup. It ain't just me. There's no way.
Have any others come forward to you?
No, and he's actually told me it's not just me. So this is an informed opinion. It can't just be me. No, but not to me, but I am told there are other books in the works for the autumn, and I don't know precisely the details that's contained in those books, but I would be surprised if some part of it wasn't consistent with my experience.
Okay, so you're not working with a publisher in this case, right? You're doing it yourself.
This book I didn't want to do myself. It's with Trineday, Trineday. It's
Okay.
up on their upcoming releases. The book description is there. And it can be pre-ordered. It's very expensive outside of the US for shipping with them, but it'll be in the system shortly.
Right, I have a link for that. I'll share shortly as well.
Please do. Please do.
Darian wanted me to ask this question. Do you believe there's someone at the top of this chain of terror that is powerful, thus may not be too keen about this book coming out? Do you have any apprehension or fear in releasing this book?
Well, I don't give a shit what happens to me now. I found God in Jerusalem. I'm basically shoot me already. Just fucking shoot me already. And this guy says to me, the thing they're most worried about with me is that none of the things they do to make me afraid I'm going to die are working on me anymore, because I don't particularly care. I just want to tell my story. And in terms of, is there one person in the top of the chain of terror? I can't answer Darian's question because for all I know, Darian is one of the people who's trying to find out what I know. So I can't answer that question.
Got it. And here is the link to, I believe this is the pre-sale, pre-order of your book. So if anybody would like to pre-order it, then you can click this link in the chat. And I believe it's in the notes as well below.
Beth, I have a question for you.
All right.
Well, you've crossed the line into very consciously, very deliberately, very courageously expressing your views about the way in which our consciousness is manipulated and fucked with by people who long for power and control. You've been doing this for a long time. I've noticed you doing it. Where do you live inside of the fear question? You're a mother, you have a son. Is there any way in which there are times when you feel as though you would like to step back from being one of these messengers? And how does it live itself out in terms of your own day-to-day anxiety, if it does?
Yeah, good question. I have, at times, there are certain interviews that I would do. I went through a series on controlled op last year. The last interview of that was cause for losing my first YouTube channel. I've faced some consequences, as we talked about in 2020 when I stood up when I couldn't hold my tongue anymore after 5 years of seeing, pulling back the veil. The sacrifice meant I lost my entire extended family to the tune of, I don't know, 60 people. There's still 2 that will talk to me, 2.5, and at a distance. So that was a huge, what's that?
Ridiculous. It's so
Yeah, yeah,
ridiculous. Just because you have
I
a
know.
different view.
I know. I was crucified and attacked and segregated away. And my son has been, they said that it has nothing to do with him, but of course he's, just as outside as I am. I don't really suffer the fear, partly because I practice a lot of deprogramming and releasing hygiene. And this is something you and I haven't caught up too much, but it became a real, focus center point of my work, because that's ultimately how I survived cancer, how I got through what I was told was a terminal illness, and saved my life that way. And facing death has been a normal thing for me for 25, almost 25 years. So then it doesn't mean I don't get scared. It doesn't mean I don't get anxiety or nerves, but I have really great tools, and I've been building an excellent community that is focused on exactly this kind of work. So I now have support because I've created coaches that I trust and can do personal work with. I have apprentices now that are my inner circle, where a lot of the things can take place now, but at a physical level, I'm pretty isolated. I have been X'd by most everyone in this community, with some very rare, beautiful exceptions. And that's, I can count my friends on 1.5 hands, which was, I'm very well connected. A lot of people know me here, but it was a systematic turning away. And I wouldn't use the word targeted, but one after the other, there was some reason to
Alienated. You're being alienated.
alienate and push me away. And, for maybe it's a different reason for every different person, or maybe there is some kind of central psyop going on. Had God whisper in my ear about a few of those things. But it can be a moment to moment thing. And then the things that used to scare me don't really scare me anymore. Like you said, I would rather die the warrior fighting for the right thing personally. I realize that implicates people in my life, but my son is pretty much a fearless protector himself. And he stands behind me, which is a miracle.
Nice.
And I just refuse to suffer that much, to live in a state of suffering where at all possible.
And what is it? What is it? If I don't know if there's an easy answer, but what is it about death? What is it about your soul that is comfortable confronting things that many other people aren't comfortable with? I mean, what action? How does your actualizing tendency work? That it's oriented in the direction of having to see through the veils and realize, and I think, I don't know if we would agree on everything, but I think we'd agree on many things quite cogently, what's going on in the world and the way that humanity is exploited and manipulated. Why were you able to see this? You're Canadian, you could just as easily have continued to bumble along thinking that everybody in positions of power loves and cares for you so deeply, but you don't. Yeah. Why?
Yeah, so a few answers, good questions. We're turning the tables here, but I'm okay with that, because I actually really like being asked questions. And so I was told, based on an astrology reading many years ago when I was in India, that I have see-through vision, and that just confirmed what I already knew. I have a kind of X-ray vision. I've always seen more than people see, and especially if there's an elephant in the room, I seem to be the one who's going to point it out.
Right.
Everybody can see it, but I'm going to point it out. I'm going to open my mouth. I'm going to pay the price of opening my mouth. I've been learning how to do that in a strategic way and well timed and well chosen, rather than doing that for every single elephant in the room, because that'd be a full-time job 24/7. And I do also believe that there's a certain percentage of the population, maybe 20, that can't be hypnotized. And it's the same kind of people that a placebo won't work on. And I've always been that one. If you give me something and tell me to believe in it,
Yeah.
it won't work based on my belief, because I have believed in things that didn't work and I have not believed in things that did work. So, there's, and I made a post on Facebook one day: if you can't be hypnotized, put your hand up. We should be friends.
It's
And
interesting, Marker.
yeah, yeah, and it is a harder life, because I don't want to see that. It does cause stress. So, one of the subjects that came to my awareness in this past year, due to a very close contact of mine going through something, I think they should have never been diagnosed with a psychosis, and certainly should never have been put on an antipsychotic medication that has absolutely ruined her life. It ruined her health.
Well,
It,
they're designed to ruin your life and get you trapped in the money laundering system that is big pharma and psychiatry. I mean, that's what that is, right?
Exactly, exactly. So, it was a subject that I didn't particularly want to speak out about, but this, I think you and I share, that when God tells you to do something, especially 3 times, and it creates pressure and keeps creating pressure, and maybe a little hard on your sleep, and you just got to do the thing. So I've got myself in the habit of continuously doing that. Even hosting you for the interview today, there's a little bit of, I have a question on my list here. Do you expect backlash from today's interview?
I mean, I swim in an ocean of backlash. I don't know anything other than backlash anymore. My whole life is fucking backlash. Maybe for you. Um, what's interesting for me is I'm almost comfortable saying this, but I have noticed over the last while that a number of the people who I knew on a connected level, who turned away from me and turned against me in the situation, have experienced a different kind of backlash than the ones I experienced. I cannot tell you how many of them, few of them have had their properties burned down who are part of this story. Really strange cancers appear unexpectedly and seemingly incredibly healthy people. Parents or loved ones dying when nobody expected them to. Car accidents, loss of body parts. I mean, I'm talking serious stuff. I put up a number of posts lately and said, "Do you people need
These
to
were
do
your
something?"
friends? Those were your
Some,
friends?
yeah, some friends, some people who are just part of the story and should never have gotten involved in the story, and they're in the book, named or not named. Just people who have worked against me in this, let's call it a collective crucible. I no longer call it an individualistic crucible, because I don't think this story is just about me anymore. I just don't believe that. And I'm not delusional. I don't think God sits around and chose me. I don't think that. But there's no question, based on the things that have happened and are continuing to regularly happen to people who, and it may just simply be that being in the toxic state you have to be in to turn against somebody who's just fighting against abuse of power creates all kinds of problems in your life energetically anyway. I don't pretend to understand it, but I remember my hand was up against the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. I was in the Old City for about a month, had remarkable visions and experiences, and really clear visions, nothing off the charts mystical, very grounded situational visions. And I kept seeing the people who had undermined me and who had turned against me and who had done various things to support the other side, and all the great many things that I knew in fact had happened to them. I wasn't getting new information, but it was all just sort of lining up. And I was like, whoa, what is this thing? Why is this all happening? And I've shared and written a lot of these various people who had things happen or haven't yet had things happen, and said in my own little discreet way, you need to call this into the RCMP or the FBI. Whoever got you involved in this is not lawful. The guy I read the stuff from who knows about it, none of this is lawful. If they got a judge's order, it's to listen to me or watch me. That's it. And if it's the RCMP or something like the SBI, I'm supposed to get a letter when they're done. So, and I did Privacy Act appeals with CSIS and RCMP trying to get answers. I couldn't get any answers from them. But I have let these people know this is, you may have been convinced you're doing a good thing because of evil and horrible and crazy Jeff Brown, and you really need to do this for the world. That's not what happened here. These people have put themselves at risk. And when you get involved in trying to trigger, just think about it this way. This is why this is like we're getting into somatic psychotherapy, thankfully now so much. And when you do stuff to trigger a person, to silence them, make them crazy, contribute to their madness, lead to them dying from a heart attack or a stroke. I'm 62 years old. In my view, you have committed at the very least assault and at the very most attempted murder. You may think all you're doing is what some guy paid you to do, that called you on the phone and said he's something or other, and you got paid $200 to write a thing to me to say that thing. I have a list of all these people. I have a second book that I'm going to put out for free, Beth, with their names, pictures, email addresses, home addresses, access point, working where they work, and exactly what they did to try to contribute to my fucked upness in this situation. Those people should try to get ahead of this right now and call this into media or true and legitimate law enforcement, because all of this stuff was pulling strings and off the books. All these audio probes, all the access to the phones, all the cops following behind me. None of that is lawful. None of this is lawful. And as I said, a number of these people have suffered immeasurably as a result of getting involved in this. So whatever this thing is serious business. I may not survive it, but I'm not going to be the only one who doesn't survive it. That's for sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
And do you want to talk about the incident with the medication? I actually do have one question maybe in advance is what's breadcrumbing?
Yeah. So this relates to the story because I didn't really know what it was, although my intuition, which I always imagined as Judd Hirsch, remember Judd Hirsch from Taxi, on my shoulder whispering old Judaic wisdoms. Get away from these people. Get away already. This is a locomotive. This train's going to crash, Jeffrey. Get away, Jeffrey. You bet. Sorry, what was your, Judd Hirsch took over again. What was your question?
About breadcrumbing. You have one of the videos.
Yeah, breadcrumbing, right. So basically, it's when somebody, in an effort to get something from you, will sort of write you and say, would you write this piece for me? And hey, we can do this great big thing together. So you do the thing for them, but then you never hear back. Or they start using your work, and you're a little uncomfortable because it seems like they're using your work a lot, and maybe you're not mentioning your name. And then they're like, oh, but I'm going to write a book forward for your book. And then they can't. In that case, I actually was quite happy because I wanted Andrew to write that book, but book forward. But so breadcrumbing is just people just keep offering you things and they don't come through with them. And the intention really is to just keep you hooked. So they're kind of hooked to the IV that is you, because you're providing them with words and ideas that, let's just say, make them look a lot smarter and more interesting than they in fact really are. Right.
Yeah, it's fascinating when people use, I don't know why I came to this life with a sensitivity to it, but I feel like I have, and I don't swear that much on my podcast, but I'm going to say it, I feel like I've been fucked with a lot in my past, and I've failed in that. They were successful in fucking with me. And then there was one moment when I had received a lot of, it could be bribes. Oh, Beth, you're going to be famous because of this, and oh, there's some money on the other side. So I started to receive some of those kind of accolades and what do you call it? Like almost flirting, but not in a sexual way. Just trying to get me feel like they're a good path for me in particular, to
Sure.
entice me to things they think that I want.
That's breadcrumbing.
That's breadcrumbing. There you go. Yeah. And then I looked out the window one time and I just went, you know what? This time around, I am unfuckwithable.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. Well, part of it is just learning, and getting to see what breadcrumbing is. And now I look back on my life, and I admit there were many breadcrumbers. I didn't have language for it, didn't understand it, and I'd get hooked into it. But so in this political situation, what I think is sort of an interesting backdrop. There's many backdrops, but is that pretty much I think everybody who tries to connect with the Trudeaus when they were in power were like them, just very, very ambitious people who wanted something. Like the Trudeaus are very ambitious people who wanted something.
Yeah.
People who have natural, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having ambition if it relates to a calling, but if it's just some other ambition, it often ends up being a problem. So I think when I made efforts to disconnect, and I can't speak for them with certainty, but I think that probably wasn't something they were used to, unless the books that are also coming out in the fall are from people telling the same story as mine and saying, I don't want to be part of this. My soul says no. And because I left criminal law when I was primed to become the next Eddie Greenspan. I don't say that egoically, it's true. There's a reason I was writing Eddie's crosses, wrote the jury address, and was directing Eddie and waking up in a courtroom. I was born for that, and I left that. And so I had already made the ultimate decision to walk away from everything my impoverished Jewish background wanted, which was to become a prominent, wealthy, and person doing good work in law in Canada, in Toronto, downtown Toronto in particular, to follow a path of unknown path for a long time until I was ready to write and had suffered enough and I had something of some wisdom to offer, along the way. So I had gone through this whole process already of choosing the soul's journey. So then these people, I come and connect with these people, and I should have listened to my Judd Hirsch on my shoulder, and not done it. But but whatever. 51% said yes, 49 said no, so I did it. So whatever. What are you going to do? But I don't think they expected that at some point, if it didn't feel true to my soul's journey, which is everything that all I care about, I don't care about. So a lot of times, what these techno terrorists do is they try to torment me with visions of mansions and showing impoverishment and homelessness, as though for me, the worst thing in the world. They've studied my childhood. And as a child, it was terrible because my mother was on and on about homelessness. But if I honor my soul's journey and end up economically challenged versus become very successful through the eyes of the world, but have really shat on my soul, I really get the difference between these two things. So,
Yeah.
so when I left, I think it was perplexing, partly because of Sophie's obvious attachment to me, but I think it was perplexing because, and there were times when I thought, oh, maybe I should go work in the government. But then what am I going to do in my publishing business? Like I had all those thoughts, but I just wasn't tempted by it. I really was there for good. Sure, I wanted, like, I felt propped up. My family, my peripheral family, we were now embraced in the halls of power. It definitely felt like a healing. And it's in the book, I write about it that way. But I wasn't there because I didn't want to become her ghostwriter. I didn't want to become somebody who hangs out with the Harry and Meghan, or like the two most boring people other than the Trudeaus I could ever imagine. I have no interest in being the Jeff Brown self-help guy that all these famous people, because that was what was starting to happen. Um, I don't want that. I just want to create stuff that makes the world a better place and leave me the fuck alone for the most part. And I don't think they got that. They didn't know me. I didn't know them. But I think we want more people like me out there who are following their encoded path, and really get that there is an encoded path, that they are in this lifetime to actualize particular encodings. My last book, which is the build-up book to the in Trudeau's Kitchen, is called "Where Is God in All of This: A Conversation," and this is what comes through this conversation is the encoded journey, which is ironic and interesting because the Trudeau, to me, the way Sophie Trudeau functioned with me, the way Justin Trudeau functioned politically, was more about ambition and celebrity culture and power than having a deep and profound, truly service-oriented calling. Sure, he presented himself that way, but tyranny always masquerades as benevolence. I mean, we've really got to get it. Like when Mark Carney, flies off to Vancouver to be with the Filipinos after the loss of you have to ask yourself, does he really care about the Filipinos?
No.
Or is this a political move? Only right just before the Monday election. You have to ask questions like that about, there are people who are motivated to go into politics by service, some absolutely just by power, and some it's a blend. It's egoic, but they also, Pierre Poilievre probably would like to feel from where he came from like he's the prime minister because he overcame so much, adopted family, he had various things to overcome. But at the same time, there's a part of him in my, and listen, I've been wrong before, clearly about Politico, but that I think really wants to do good by Canada. It's very clear from Trudeau's administration, he wanted to do good by China, by globalism, by communism, by setting all this up. That is not a service-oriented thing. If he had run on those things, if he had said, this is what I'm really, if Carney had said, this is what I'm really about to do, remove the budget, take it to the next level, communize the country, all the rest of it, blend you with Europe, say fuck off to America, who's the only one who'll ever protect us when the Great War comes. If he had said, this is what I'm going to do, and people had voted him in, there's nothing to say about it. But to just spew Pierre Poilievre talking points and pretend you're the great protector because Big Daddy got gray hair, when the real protector is the nationalist, the Conservative Party, is a horror show, in my view, because you're misrepresenting yourself. You're a power broker and you're pretending you're a person of service. What we need are people of service, particularly in the political area. And it is so evident that so much of what's happening now is because we're having a hard time attracting the brilliant people who are service-oriented to the political world. And I think until we solve that problem, we're going to not solve any of the problems that really matter.
Right, right. One of the nuances I was thinking about when you're talking about, so maybe I maybe can't be seduced for money, or I can't be seduced for fame or possessions or power in a political or any other way, but I can be seduced for my calling. And this is one of those little nuances, and see if you can relate to that. That, if I think that, I went off to an Acapulco, an event in Mexico this year, and I knew that it wasn't going to be good for me, physically, the health. It turned out to be a kind of disaster. I did get sick for the whole time I was there. I missed my own talk and my own workshop, and but I was seduced by there's going to be somebody that can hear this message. And what you talked about, like each one's encoding, and I'm sure this, you really helped me bring this home in those earlier years when we were connecting, that encoded, or people that are answering their calling, which basically means answering to God, are dangerous, right? My ancestors were persecuted for their Christian faith, for preaching the gospel, because they didn't answer to the communists in Russia. They answered to God and to their faith. And so this is the danger. And that's why, I'm a broken record trying to help people in the exact same way that you have also been, to find that what they're here to do. Because when we do that thing and we do it collectively, or not collectively, but enough of us do it, then that creates the force that would have us turn, just literally forget about the political arena, not even notice it because it's not relevant. Right.
Well, unfortunately, but sadly, it is, because now we're in a communist coup and it's going to affect everything. So I think we want to reach the place where honoring your encoded path doesn't lead to your death. Okay. We want to reach the stage of consciousness where it's so supported, it's so absolutely. My dream is that I survive this verstinkene, whatever the fuck this is, and I can bring through encodings as my teaching model and have encoded people, encodees and encoders wandering the planets, trying to encourage people not to buy into a particular religion, but to really buy into the religion of the self and the encoded path that lives within them. To me, if everybody was feeling what Virginia Satir was said to have felt before she died, when she said, I did what I came here to do, that's the world I want to live in. At this stage of human development, because we're so fucked and there's so many unencoded ones still in positions of power, and we need to rise up, whistleblower legislation, physically rise up, do all kinds of things to be able to shift this in the direction of encoded service-oriented people being in positions of influence, not power, influence, right? We want to reach the place where that, but until that happens, some of us who are called to their encoded path have to accept we will likely suffer or perish within it and before it. The odds that even me at 62, if you read this book, I know you're going to say, how the fuck is he alive? And, especially if this just continues. So, but I have accepted at the Wailing Wall. I've accepted at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre where Jesus was buried. I've accepted in the cab with the Arab guys crying about what's going on, what happened October 7th, who do not see any of this as a genocide, and all of them identified as a war. In the presence of all of these people, I understood that the great battle between encoded consciousness and unencoded consciousness lives at the heart of my situation and lives at the heart of me. I'm up against a whole, it's David versus Goliath on steroids. There have been hundreds or thousands of these characters involved in this situation against little old me. Why am I alive? Because I have more encoded energy. Is God supporting me? Probably. My director, Little Missy. I have words for it in the God book, but I also understand that at some point I had to make a decision, and whatever happened with that ruse, when somebody was gone from my life, I didn't want to publish because I was worried about them. But then I was like, oh, well, they're gone and they're happy. So I guess I could publish. But like suddenly it shifted. But I understood that now I was walking one step closer to death. And the reality is, I would rather die with my story told and live with my story buried when it's a story of this epic nature. That's true for me. And I would rather die living an encoded life, even if a bunch of motherfuckers rip me to shreds, than live and die in an unencoded life.
There you go. Spoken like a true king hero. I also very much hope, I'm just going to say this out loud, I very much hope that you are able to spend a little time with Garrett Smith's work, because I think it could bring enormous hope to your situation. Just want you to know that.
Great,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
I'm not saying that lightly at all. And I wouldn't say that about like pretty much anybody else at this stage. Well, we're starting to come towards the end of our time together. Is there any other messages that you feel like you would like to get out at this time?
What I would like to say, just a few things about whistleblowers. When we used to encounter people who were going on about all this shit that happened to them and famous people and all this shit, like all this stuff. Thank you, Jennifer. We disregard them. Maybe they're walking around like I have been in like papers hanging out because they're trying to keep their documentation and they don't want anyone to steal it from their apartment or try to look at those people. They're in the libraries a lot. They're men, but not only men, and just sit down with them and ask them what happened. Because it could very well be that a lot of those people who end up institutionalized by people who don't want that story to be told, are not obsessed with famous people because they're delusional. It's because famous people are the biggest abusers of power on the planet, and the story may even be true. And to support whistleblowers in your community. If you can't do it for them because you don't care, do it for you. Because there is no chance, if you have kids or grandkids and all the rest, or if you care about humanity, there is no chance for this species to evolve to the next stage of its encoded reality and way of being. There's zero chance if we do not support whistleblowers within communities to have a place to live. The biggest fear is you're going to end up homeless, impoverished, and die in your car. We all carry that in the sociology of poverty consciousness of humanity. Almost everybody carries that, except for those phony monarchistic motherfuckers who pretend they have rarefied bloodlines, and they are the most inbred fucked up people on the planet, right? Apart from those people, everybody has that fear. Support them in getting the story told, especially if it involves high level power, economic, political, religious, spiritual power. Support them in the community. Make them your family. Take care of them. Buy them a meal. Talk to them, because you can be assured if there's any thread of truth to this story, whoever they are pissing off has made sure they are isolated and are talking to themselves, because humans need people. I'm starting in my car. When I'm writing, I'm working on a book, I talk a lot. But I was in my car, I'm talking to myself because I can't call anybody. Throw my fucking phones. So you need to understand Whistleblowers get isolated, they get made crazy. Help them, support them, love them, even if they're unbearable, because they truly are the only hope for this species. With no whistleblowers, they're just going to keep exploiting everything until there's nothing left of us, and there's 87 of them left on a fucking island or in a bunker, and they're all going to kill each other, and there's going to be one fucking human left, not even two, for them to create another one to keep the species alive. That's what's going to happen. We have to fight, and we have to protect these people. And I'm obviously speaking from my subjective experience. But listen, I complain about being isolated, but I have good friends. I'm a former lawyer. I know who to call and talk to. A lot of people have knowledge, have been beaten down by these systems, and they have nobody to talk to and nobody to turn to, and nobody's going to support them financially. And they really need to know, it's the biggest day in their life when you show up and you say, I'm going to help you to bring this through. I'm going to help you to bring this through. And that's what's going to change the world.
That's beautiful. Wow. Very powerful. Thank you so much, Jeff, for getting in contact.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you for all your great work. Very rare in Canada, somebody as courageous as you. So wonderful to see.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You got it.
Thanks to everyone who joined today, and please leave your comments below the video. And I'm getting in the habit of saying this now. It does help if you like and share this out, and help to beat against some of the shadow banning that's going on, which is kind of sad for me, but I'm used to it, so that's fine. And yeah, appreciate that everybody came. Thank you so much, Jeff. Do visit jeffbrown.co, and the links that are in the show notes below to the new book coming out. Do you have a date, by the way, that it's going to be?
September. I'm pushing, but
yeah. Okay, let me share.
We're getting there.
Okay. Oh, darn, I lost.
Thank you. In Trudeau's kitchen. Trudeau's kitchen.
Yeah. I'll share that link one more time in the chat here too, if anybody wants to pre-order. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Yeah, best way to support Jeff, Lucas said.
I think get that. I feel like that book holds the possibility to evoke meaningful collective transformation. So recommend the book. Even if you can't afford the book, just encourage people to buy that book, because more than any other book I've written before, I think this book actually could make a difference.
Very good. Well, I'll be grabbing my copy. Absolutely. All right. Best wishes. Keep me posted. If you want to come on at any other time, you're most welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Okay. You're very welcome. Bye for now. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want to follow up on any of the work I do as well, you can visit bethmartins.com and do a quiz. And in 10 minutes, find out where on the path of purpose you are. Jeff has been an enormous influence. It's so interesting it's like going through a past life to revisit. We've had several iterations as friends, and I know that he was a massive influence to me. So we're like two peas in a pod. And so bethmartins.com is the place that you can do that quiz in 10 minutes, and you'll get some results there. And there's 10 videos for each of the 8 archetypes of the hero's journey that I write about in my book. And yeah, we're on the same page. I think he's a brother from another mother personally. And sorry, he's suffering so much. And I do pray that he finds Garrett's work and applies it, because I think that could be the key to everything. We never did get into the psychiatric drugs, but I will encourage you to go to my last live stream with Justine Lalonde, a psychiatrist who is speaking out, a kind of whistleblower herself, to talk about the reasons that people end up severely poisoned by those medications. And so, yeah, we have to protect real journalism. They are indeed the whistleblowers. Exactly. We call it alternative media, and there's lots of crap in the alternative media too. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily trustworthy just because they call themselves the alt media, but that's how it goes. All right. Well, have a beautiful rest of your day, you guys. And I'm not sure exactly when my next interview is going to be. I was been binging on these interviews for a little bit, and I'll be having a short break while I come back with some new things to rant and rave about. All right, my dears, I'm going to play us out now with a clip by my son. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Lots of love.